Never land the traffic right.
No.
I don't even know what it is.
Wait.
All right, good evening. Welcome to Town Hall. It is Thursday, June 2nd, about 7 p.m. This is a regularly scheduled Town Council meeting. First order of business is pledge to the flag. Next on the agenda is a land acknowledgement statement, which I will read. The town of South Kingstown pays homage to the indigenous people and land on which the town is now located. Let this acknowledgement serve as a reminder of our ongoing efforts to recognize, honor, reconcile, and partner with the Narragansett tribe whose land and water we benefit from today. Next on the agenda is the roll call. If you could.
Council President McEntee.
Here.
Council Vice President Collins.
Here.
Councilwoman Bergner.
Here.
Councilwoman Kelso.
Here.
And Councilwoman Rose is absent.
Thank you. That's going to bring us to new business, item 3A, which is a resolution authorizing the town manager to execute an electricity supply agreement to provide electricity supply for South Kingstown's community electricity aggregation program, so long as the supply rate for the default supply option offered by the program is lower than the projected last resort service rates as provided by National Grid to the Public Utilities Commission, to go into effect October 1, 2022, as further described in a memorandum from Good Energy Limited Partnership Aggregation Consultant to the Town Manager dated May 23, 2022. At this time, I know we have a presentation.
Okay, we're right on. Excuse me. Council members, thank you so much for calling a special meeting for this. I recognize that is unusual in our precedence, so I'm going to get into a quick update and why we're doing that now, but really it's around the time is of the essence for a bid that's going out for multiple municipalities. So I'll go through quickly where we're at in the program and how the bid process is going to unfold essentially over the next week. So get to that next year. And just as I always try to start just as like grounding of the purpose of the aggregation program. It's about changing the default electricity supply for the town of South Kingstown. So instead of relying on formerly National Grid, now I'm going to make this mistake forever about referring to them inappropriately, but now Rhode Island Energy. And the Public Utilities Commission currently work to secure last resort service so that there's always a default supply of electricity for any resident across the state. A community aggregation program is to say that an individual town, through the aggregation of its electricity demand, can actually go out to the market and secure more competitive rates than just what's provided at the statewide as a default. So the purpose of the program is to change that supply portion of the electricity, of our electricity bill, but it's not changing any of the delivery, any of the infrastructure costs, the poles, the wires, all of that was National Grid, now Rhode Island Energy. They're still the ones that are responsible for the delivery of the electricity. This is solely about where we're sourcing it from. So if we go to that next here. So there's 6 municipalities that are participating in the bid. The bid is coming up most likely next week, which once again I'll get into. I know my colleague Patrick Roach was here either end of November, beginning of December, that time frame. At that point, we had issued a request for proposals from suppliers that would be interested in servicing these 6 municipalities and their electricity supply. Since that time, we've engaged with the suppliers. We've sought to identify and vet the approaches that they have. There was not just one. The different supply companies that we worked with, there was not just one way to do this, there was a number of them. And so we've worked over the previous months to really drill down on what is your supply, like what is your approach to procuring supply, what's the methodology you're going to use, how do we make sure that the information that you're using is public, it's transparent, it's auditable, so that we know that the rates that we're going to be able to deliver for our communities are going to be the most competitive possible. And then as well, that there were these corollary programs that were being vetted by the Public Utilities Commission, specifically purchase of receivables, which essentially allows low-income residents to participate in these programs without credit checks, without any sort of contingencies or any sort of vetting. It's to make sure that suppliers aren't solely taking on the risk of everybody that participates in the program. It's actually a partnership between them and the utility, since the utility is doing the billing. So that program was finalized as of April 1st between all the suppliers and then National Grid. So that program is now in effect. And so we're finally to the point now where we can do an executable bids, where suppliers can give us firm pricing to supply the programs. But we had to wait till all these pieces kind of came into place first. And as we'll get into, this is not necessarily the most stable time for electricity pricing, which is why we feel that the time is critical for us to get out into the market and to begin and to actually evaluate executable bids before what we see of a ramping up of prices continues to ramp up. And so once again, the other communities that we're working with are South Kingstown, Providence, Central Falls, Barrington, Portsmouth, and Newport. We have Narragansett on there, but their plan is not through the Public Utilities Commission yet, so they're not going to be participating in this initial bid. They are still probably a couple months behind in the process, so we'll have to work with them separately or with other communities that come along as time allows. So if we go to the next one, and just so visualize the timeline of where we're at right now in this May through June period has been finalizing the contracts with the suppliers. The numbers aren't inserted of what they're going to offer us. That's coming up on the bid day, but we wanted to make sure the contracts were done and prepared prior to the bidding being completed. And so this is part of the working with each one of the communities to make sure there's somebody empowered to actually sign the contract on behalf of the community. And then right now we're aiming for either next Tuesday or Wednesday to be the actual bid days when we would be receive executable pricing from the suppliers. Just looking forward, assuming that the bids come in responsive and are ones that we can execute on, the target program launch date is October of 2022. As it is intended to coincide with when last resort service rates are going to be changing for residents that are on current supply. I'll go through a quick chart in a minute, but the intention is that prior to that program launch, the education outreach period will happen in September. We'll begin doing the outreach in August prior to that. There'll be postcards mailed to let everybody know this is coming, a consumer notification letter that allows people to identify if I want to stay with Rhode Island Energy, this is the rate that they're offering, this is the rate of the aggregation plan that I'll be enrolled in if I don't take any action. These are the alternative options that I have of if I want less renewable energy, if I want more renewable energy. It'll outline each one of the pricing options, as well as walking them through how they can opt out of the program before it's ever started, or after the program has started, how they can opt out of it. So that's all in the consumer notification letter. And also during this lead up to October, we'll be doing community events, community meetings. If we can do multi-community meetings, that's great, if at all possible, but essentially we'll be throughout the community to make sure that we're doing as many opportunities for people to come and learn about the program prior to it ever launching. So we go to the next slide. So what the request and why we're before you is that the bid day, once again, is planned for June 7th or 8th. There's some market conditions that are in place. I'm trying not to go too far into the weeds on this, but what we're seeing is that the volatility of pricing for electricity is so high that there are some days that the suppliers say, we want this to settle out. We're not going to actually issue any executable pricing today, so come back tomorrow. And so we've tried to open up 2 days for us to have to be able to make sure we land on one of them. And so the resolution that's been proposed to you is to authorize a signatory. I'm assuming that would be our town manager. And that the bids are going to be executable for only about 1 hour. And once again, that's because the price volatility is so high that when they give you what we're looking at is the value of the electricity of all of these communities together over a 1 to 2 year period is probably going to range from $150 to $300 million of contracts that the supplier is going to have to then go out and secure. So when they give us that executable pricing, they're like, when you sign this, we are now going to go out and buy this now. So there's not that delay period of we're going to then source it or anything like that, which is why we have this narrow time period. As we've indicated to the suppliers that to be considered a responsive proposal, that rate is going to have to be below what National Grid is forecasting for October. The goal there is that this program is going to launch with everybody who's participating saving some money in comparison to National Grid, unless, of course, they opt up into more renewable products. But that the average person who's just a regular participant on the default service will be able to save money in comparison to the rates Rhode Island Energy has come October. And the other piece is to make sure that the contracts that have been proposed with the supplier are in the hands of the solicitors in each one of the communities, and we need to have each one of them sign off to say this contract is consistent with the plan, there's not in conflict with any of our local ordinances or state laws. And so we're having that review done by the 6 separate solicitors. And so if we go to the next slide, this is one more? Oh, there it is. Ooh, need some glasses for that, but didn't realize it'd be so hard to see. What this is just a line of National Grid's rates over the previous years. We're in that trough right there in the mid 2022. And then when we get to October 2022, National Grid has forecasted so far a rate between 15.1 cents to 16.8 cents. And that is still subject to them doing one more supply procurement in July. The last time they did a procurement, their estimate rose from 13 cents to 15 cents to 15 to almost 17 cents. So this is all reflective of the sharp increases in specifically gas prices, while our electricity primarily comes from natural gas. And so in order for that bid to be responsive, it's going to have to be below that 15.1 cents. Anything that's above that, we would consider not acceptable. And so that's that key piece that they know that they have to be in order for them to secure the business of the communities. I'll say that we had a pre-bid meeting this morning with Mark and the manager Manny here. We went over some of the indicative pricing that we've seen, and it does look like if we had executed contracts today, we had rates below that. And I don't think anything a crazy market any sort of unsuspected market changes are going to happen in the next 6 days. But of course, we also didn't know a war in Ukraine and Russia was going to break out at that time. There's all these other factors that we're never quite sure about. But the intention is that the indicative pricing that we got today would be similar to what we see next week, which would give us a rate below that 15.1 cents. And so that's the resolution that we put before you. And the intention would be for us is that if you move forward with this, we'd be able to make sure that South Kingstown is able to participate fully in the bid next week. And the last piece, just to let you know, is that the timing of this has been a little faster than I would have intended in this. We have secured approval from each community except for yourself and Barrington at this point. We're on Barrington's council agenda next Monday, and that's the last piece that we're waiting for before we can actually execute the bids next week.
All right, thank you. Deb, go ahead.
So what happens if you don't get a rate that's executable on the 7th or 8th?
At that pace, we'll say, great, we're going to reject all the bids, send them back to the suppliers, and say we'll do this again in a month, in 2 months, and see if market conditions have changed. We just had 8 communities successfully bid in Massachusetts over the last 2 weeks, so we know it's possible. But once again, that if it doesn't come back, then we will wait, because we do not want to launch the program at a financial disadvantage.
So every month that you may have to wait, does that put the execution date from October to November to December?
We probably have about 2-month window right now where we could still launch in October. If we get towards the end of July, it'll be a little fast, but we can still deliver on the education outreach materials. We have everything pretty much queued up for it. But if we get past July, then it would have to delay the launch to after October.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from members?
If it was delayed, would you go to when they reset in the springtime for the summer rates? Or
No, we would probably, knowing how high those rates are in October, we would want, if we can secure something lower than than what we're expecting from National Grid come October, we would want to launch the program in December or January or February, just to know that we're at a peak and we'd like to be able to shave that peak off.
And is it confidential information, like how many suppliers are out there interested? Or
we've been in communication with 3 suppliers. I don't know if all of them are going to deliver bids next week. If I were a betting person, I would say not all of them are. We've seen a number of suppliers back out because of the long-term volatility of these programs. We know we will have 1. Will the other 2 continue to actually give executable pricing next week is actually up in the air.
It's a 2-year contract?
We are going to have what we've communicated to them is for them to give us options from 12 months up to 36 months. And the idea is what's the best price for the best value over that time.
And what percentage of people do you see opt out?
Historically in Massachusetts, we've seen generally about 15 to 20% of eligible customers opt out prior to the launch of a program. Given that these are the first programs in Rhode Island, it could get up to 25%, given we are unfamiliar with it. It's going to be a new thing, while new programs that launch now in Massachusetts have their neighbors that are all participating in it. So we could be up to 25% of eligible customers.
And if I remember correctly from the initial presentations, opting out was very simple, correct?
Yes. I had a whole other slide that I didn't put here, but in the letter that we send them, it'll have a self-addressed postcard, a stamped postcard that they can send back, sign their name, I'm opted out. We'll have a form on the town's website. We put together a additional piece of the website. They'll go live when the program's ready. There'll be a form there that they can do it online. They can call, we'll have a 1-800 number they can call with a call center that we're putting together to service all of the programs. They can also call Rhode Island Energy directly, and they can opt them out. Or, last one, if they decide that I want to go with this other supplier, which they can always freely do, signing up with another supplier will also opt them out of the program. So we've tried to make it as easy for those that maybe do not want to do this online. They want to do it by phone, or if they want to do it by mail. If they want to do it online, every option would be available for them.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
If the segregation program provides reduced rates, why would anyone decide to opt out? So if 1/5 of a community decides to opt out, I'm trying to understand what's the rationale they do that if they're being offered reduced rates.
I mean, I'm putting myself in the mind of somebody that would not be necessarily be making this decision. So recognizing that I'm guessing here, the feedback that we've gotten is that the town or the city told us to do this, so we said no.
Distrust of government, sort of?
Yes, that's a big portion of it. Others, there are some that say, I've been with National Grid for a long time, so I always want to stay with them. Of course, the argument there is they left too, so I'm not sure where the loyalty there lies, but there's some that have said, I want to stick with who I know, and others have said, I just don't want government to be involved in this.
So this is a good segue to how do you plan to educate the community? Because I think that's where people are not going to understand what it is. And because of the way that it's an opt-out, we're basically forcing the change, so they might be resistant. So are there opportunities in the community that you've already come up with to meet with people? Yes.
I mean, besides the mailing, which is kind of the way that we get the most blanket and widespread because it goes to every account holder, I'd have to go back and review exactly what we put in the plan, but we listed out a number of organizations that we'd partner with to make sure that the communities of interest are being able to be contacted. We started working on a roster of like newsletters and organizational notices that we can get in as long as we have about 2 months lead time. We can get those in. We're willing to do presentations at any senior living centers. We go down to the beach and happily do one there. That's personally just for me because that's I would like to do it. But then we would also, some of the fun things that we've done is, we've done bookmarks at the library to make sure like every time a book is checked out, a bookmark goes in with a notice on it. And any one of these ideas as they come up, like we are ready to execute on that if there are ideas that maybe we haven't come up with. But our team is going to say, like, this is what's worked in other communities. Let's make sure we do that. Make sure we talk with the staff here about what are the local organizations that we have to know about and that we have to meet with. And the other piece is like we've already seen a series of articles around like news articles around the expected high electricity prices. We're going to communicate directly with the reporters that are doing that and ensure, I say ensure if you can ever do that with a member of the media, but encourage them that if you're going to report on this, you should also report on the about 300,000 people in Rhode Island that are not going to be paying that price. Because we've done something different. So we want to do as much earned media as possible as the reporting on the situation happens, but then as many local events as possible. We'll have an entire team ready to, by team, I mean, there's about 6 of us. They'll be ready to do events throughout the communities for the 2 months leading up to it.
Thank you. Any last questions from the members? All right, do I hear a motion?
Make a motion that we approve item 3A.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Anyone opposed? All right, that motion passes. Thank you for your time, and that's going to bring us to the end of the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
We hear a motion, a second. Any discussion on this one? You sure? Anyone opposed? All right, the motion passes. That's going to bring us to the end. Thank you for everyone's time.
Thank you. All right. Well, this is still on.